everybody. My name is Althea. I lead advocacy and policy at Etsy, which is, if you haven't heard of it, an online marketplace where creative entrepreneurs sell their goods, handmade goods, vintage goods, craft supplies to a global marketplace of buyers. And I'm here to talk to you today about what Etsy sellers can teach us about the changing nature of work, and most importantly, what they can teach us about the public policies and systems that we need to put into place to prepare for that future of work. So just to start, I think this is a story a lot of people know, but work is changing and quickly. So 20, 30 years ago, many people only had 2 or 3 jobs in their whole career. They worked 9 to 5. They stuck with those employers for a long time, eventually retired with their pension and their gold watch. Thank you for your service. That is no longer the world that we are working in or living in. Many more people now are working short-term jobs, part-time jobs, temporary jobs, gig jobs. Many folks are working for themselves. They're combining income from multiple sources, and they are moving from job to job much more quickly. And this is not a quaint little trend. So in the US, about 40% of the workforce is now comprised of independent workers, and this is not just in the US. So in the UK, it's about 14 million people. In Germany, it's about 30% of the working-aged population, and we expect this to grow. So recent studies from McKinsey showed that of the working-age population in both the US and Europe, 45% of people are interested in independent work and believe that they will work independently at some point in their career. So what's leading to this? Well, technological change is certainly driving some of this. Technology is destroying some jobs or changing the skills necessary for some jobs. This is a map of the US. These are the top jobs by state today. I can't tell you what this map is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now, but I can tell you that truck driver is not likely to be the dominant occupation in all of those states. And you could make a map similar to this for many countries around the world. So yes, technology is changing jobs and destroying them, but it's also creating them. So on Etsy, many people can start businesses based with a laptop out of their home, and we have found that 53% of our sellers sold their goods on Etsy for the first time, and that's a metric that's growing for Etsy. So what you're seeing is technology can also create an on-ramp to entrepreneurship and into this new world of work. So let's take a moment to talk about Etsy sellers, because I think they really are sort of harbingers of this new economy. So we have 1.8 million sellers on Etsy around the globe. Almost all of them are women. 87% of them are women, and most of them are working out of their homes. So they're sole proprietors, they're businesses of one. They are those micro businesses, and their needs and concerns as businesses of one are very different from even a 10, 20, 30 person business. You can see that about 1/3 of our sellers, for them, their creative business is their sole occupation, both on and off Etsy. For the rest, it's an important source of supplemental income. And if you think about a world where you're having to combine income from multiple sources, supplemental income will become more and more important in this world where we are basically driving our own careers and combining work from multiple places. So that income is important, but it is not the only thing. For Etsy sellers, they're starting their business, yes, to earn some money, but also because they want to be able to have a creative outlet and fulfillment, because they want autonomy and independence and to be their own boss, because they want to be able to spend more time with their kids and earn a living. And all of those things are important, and they drive the choices that they make and also the goals that they have for their business and for their career. And before you write them off as sort of cute little hobbyists, remember that yes, they are small, but they're also global. So they are selling their goods to people all around the world. Etsy is a global marketplace. We have about 30 million buyers around the world, and most Etsy sellers start selling internationally from the day that they open their shops. So what are we talking about? We're really talking about the new face of entrepreneurship, and it is one that is quite different from sort of your hoodie-wearing Silicon Valley stereotype that you might have in your mind of an entrepreneur. So it is, yes, the new face of entrepreneurship. It is also the new face of work. And so the experiences, we believe, of Etsy sellers can teach us a lot about not only the challenges that we will face going forward, but some of the solutions that we need to think about moving into the future. And I think the key here is to recognize that they are not they don't fit into our old boxes of worker or business. They are both, and that informs both their experiences and their challenges, and also the solutions that we should think about. So we see 3 key areas where we must innovate for a new economy. The first is around economic security. We need to figure out how to provide economic security for everyone who works, regardless of how they work. The second is make it easy for a micro business, a business of one, to start and grow in the global economy. And third, we need to foster collaboration between government, the private sector, and communities to adapt more quickly to technological change. So let's look at each of these. So first, start with the basics, and this is really about economic security. So people are out on their own in this new world of work, and they need a system of support to catch them if they fall. And that system of support has to be tied to them and not their job, which is the traditional way we have done that in the past. And yes, some of the conversation around the gig economy has focused on benefits and security, but it's been narrowly focused so far, we feel, on on-demand platforms like Uber or Handy or others, which frankly look a bit more like the traditional employer model, which means when you think about solutions, you go right back to the systems and that we sort of built for 20th century work. But if you reclassify every Uber driver as an employee of Uber, that is not going to provide economic security to this woman right here. This is an Etsy seller. Imagine, yes, that she sells her goods on Etsy, but she's also a freelance graphic designer who earns money in that way. And maybe she also makes some money on the side writing for a blog, what have you. She's combining income from multiple sources. She does not have a platform or an employer that feels like a traditional employer, and we need to figure out how to provide economic security for her. So how do we do that? First, we need an easy way to manage your benefits, one single place to manage your benefits that you can combine contributions from all of your different income streams, and that's tied to you, the individual, not your job. And there are some models we can look at. So in France, the self-employed, there is basically a government portal where the self-employed can see and manage all of their benefits in one place. In the US, we don't know what's going to happen with this, but currently the health insurance exchanges provide a way for any individual, regardless of how they work, to access health insurance and take that with them from job to job. Those are the models we should be looking at to decouple benefits from work. The second thing we need is an easy way to make automatic contributions to those benefits. And if you think about it, the self-employed tend to pay for and contribute to their benefits in lump sum tax payments that are very difficult to save for and feel very onerous when they hit you. As opposed to folks who are working in traditional employment like myself, my benefits contributions, whether it's through my taxes to the government for my government benefits or to the ones I manage myself, those are all coming out of my paycheck week by week in a small amount, and it's a set it and forget it system, which actually allows me to build savings over time. We need to create the same kind of systems for the self-employed. For example, through universal withholding, where even if you're being paid as a self-employed person, the person who is paying you is taking some portion of your pay out of your check and putting it into that centralized managed account. And then the third piece is protection from income volatility. And this is why it's really important to think about the problems people have today and not the benefits we needed last, 20 years ago. Income volatility is a major challenge for the self-employed, and it's not one that we have built sets of benefits around today for employment. So if you think about your Etsy seller, she experiences both short-term and long-term income fluctuations. Around the holidays, she earns quite a bit, right? A lot of people are buying unique, beautiful gifts for their family and friends. Her income goes way up. January, people stop spending as much on gifts. She sees her income fall. She needs a way to smooth out those income fluctuations over the course of time. For that, we are suggesting allowing the self-employed to set aside tax-advantaged money into a savings account that they can use for medical costs, for transportation, for dependent care, for time off, right? You don't have paid time off when you are a self-employed individual. So that's short-term income volatility. Long-term, you also need protection from catastrophic income loss, right? You're self-employed, you don't have access to unemployment insurance. We need a way to create an income floor for people when their work dries up, when there is no safety net to catch them. In that, a lot of folks have been very excited about a universal basic income. I think that is a great and exciting idea. It's also, to my mind, a bit utopian. And I think that there are some models we could look to. For example, the Earned Income Tax Credit in the US is a program that already exists that has bipartisan support that provides basically an income boost if you are working and your income falls below a certain level. So we're putting resources towards the people who need it most. I think whatever the model is you like, creating income floors that aren't tied to employment are where we need to go. So that's the basics around economic security. And those are the problems we think about when we think about our independent workers as workers, but we also have to remember that they are businesses and they face challenges that businesses face. But those are the challenges that really affect them as micro businesses, as businesses of one. And when you talk to policymakers, you know, they have a whole set of things that they think about when you talk about small businesses. They are worried about access to credit, getting government contracts, being able to employ people and grow your business as big as possible. Those are not the challenges our sellers face. As I said before, many of our sellers, they don't want to grow as big as possible. They're creating a one-person business, and that's about as big as they want to get. But their challenges are rooted in the fact that as a business of one, they are the only one doing everything you need to do to run your business. And as a business of one, that means that time is your most scarce and most valuable resource. And that sort of drives everything about in terms of both the challenges and the opportunities that micro businesses face. So you're a business of one. What do you need? Well, first, you need access to the internet. And maybe that seems obvious. And yes, it is important that we have reliable, fast broadband available, but we also need strong net neutrality protections because equal access to the internet is just as important. And it is the level playing field of the internet that enables a tiny one-person business on Etsy to compete with a giant multinational brand. And so on that, we think it's very important to keep a free and open internet around the world. Second, we need access to global markets. And in this, I'm really talking about a global trade agenda for micro businesses. And I know that trade is a dirty word these days, but maybe that is the case because much of our trade policy has been evolved for much larger multinational companies. But the fact is, today, people are putting things online, selling them to an individual, you know, in another country, putting it in a little package, taking it to their post office and sending it to somebody else's home. And our trade laws make that very, very difficult. You're seeing governments around the world want micro businesses to start collecting and remitting taxes on behalf of their consumers, you know, a bajillion miles away. And that is hard and difficult. So what we're putting forward is a micro business trade agenda that essentially exempts small micro businesses from those requirements around customs, duties, taxes, and also exempts low-value goods from those same rules. That would basically reduce much of the friction that individuals face when they're shipping goods across borders. And finally, we need simple rules and regulations. And again, maybe this seems obvious, but it is not obvious to a policymaker who often is imagining, when they're thinking about the rules of the road that they want to set, they are imagining an Amazon that is going to have to comply with these rules. They're not imagining this guy in his home. And take, for example, consumer protection. You know, some governments, they set up consumer protection rules where if you want to make a toy and sell it to somebody, you have to send it to a third-party tester who it's going to cost you like $3,000 to test that object. That is out of the realm of possibility for most Etsy sellers. There are other governments who say, you know what, we can actually design a durability test that you can administer yourself and self-certify that you have done that test, and then accept liability if there is some problem, if the arms of your stuffed animal fall off or what have you. But that regulatory model where you can self-certify works for a business of one in a way that the third-party testing does not. And so what we really advocate for policymakers is imagine the micro business designed for them first, and you'll be able to develop a regulatory system that both protects consumers, public safety, everything that it is government's job to protect, while ensuring that businesses of one have the ability to start and grow and drive this new economy. And then lastly, working better together. And I can't emphasize this one enough. Really, we need to recognize that the world is changing more quickly than ever, and we don't know what the needs will be 10 years from now, but we do know that because technology is changing so quickly, the needs will change quickly, and we need to adapt more quickly. So we need to think about how do we actually work with government or create systems to work with government to enable government to adapt more quickly to the changing nature of work, the changing economy, technological change that will enable all of us to thrive in this economy. And the first point here is bring the real people to the front. I talk to policymakers every day. When you talk to them, they have one set of their mind. They think of workers, and they think of a specific set of challenges that workers face and a specific toolbox that they have to address those challenges. And then they think about businesses over here, and they have a different set of challenges, but equally rigid set of solutions that they think about. But if I bring an Etsy seller in to speak to a policymaker and just describe her day and what is hard for her, suddenly those boxes sort of float away, and they're able to look at those challenges with fresh eyes and think about, okay, what can I actually do to help you resolve those challenges? And that is the moment where you stop sort of looking backwards and start looking forwards to solving for tomorrow's problems. So real people to the front. Second, we need to break down the barriers between the public and private sector. This is not, it's your job, government, to do this, and it's my job, private sector, to do this. In fact, we need to find ways to come together to solve these problems together. A great example of this, I mentioned that customs and duties are a big problem for Etsy sellers. So you imagine a seller in the US, maybe maybe somebody in India just bought her good. That person buys her goods, she immediately has to find what are the rules, what are the taxes, what are the duties that I'm going to have to pay and my buyer is going to have to pay. Am I even allowed to ship this thing to India? Almost instantly, because she has a lot of pressure to get that thing in the mail right away to meet her buyer's expectations. That is very hard. It's very hard for almost anybody to find that information. You could imagine government collecting all of that information. It's basically just summarizing the laws, putting it into an open database with an open API that folks in the private sector could call to resolve problems in real time in the way that they need to, so that Etsy could call to that database in the moment when that transaction is made and say, hey, it's not okay to ship gold to India, or your buyer is going to have to pay, X amount when they receive the good, whatever, so that information is made available to them in the moment that they need it. Those kinds of systems where government does one side and the private sector does the other side actually can resolve many of the challenges that people face in this changing nature of work. And then finally, technology as the glue. And I think this is just sort of furthering what I was saying just a second ago, which is we have all of these new, they're not even new anymore, they're old, but open data, open APIs, open source code, all of these tools that may seem obvious to everybody in this room, but to government is like speaking a foreign language. And if we can help bring governments along and use these technologies to put forward innovative, collaborative solutions, we can adapt much more quickly to the changing economy and the changing nature of work. So that's it. Basically, the economy is changing, and it's changing really fast. We need to solve for the future, but we can only do it if we throw away our 20th century toolbox and look at the problems with fresh eyes. And when we do that, rooting our insights in the experiences of real people, we will see that we need, one, to provide economic security for everyone who works, regardless of how they work. Two, we need to adapt the rules of the road for micro businesses. And three, we need to figure out how to work better together to solve tomorrow's problems today. And if we do that, and I believe that we can, the future of work and the future of the economy seems quite bright. Thanks.